of the various things that we see written by these men. In John chapter 4, beginning in verse 46, John 4 and 46, Jesus, he came therefore again unto Cana of Galilee, where he made the water wine. And there was a certain nobleman whose son was sick at Capernaum. And when he heard that Jesus was come out of Judea into Galilee, he went unto him and besought him that he would come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. Jesus therefore said unto him, except ye see signs and wonders, ye will in no wise believe. The nobleman saith unto him, Sir, come down, ere my child die. Jesus saith unto him, Go thy way, thy son liveth. The man believed the word that Jesus spake unto him, and he went his way. And as he was now going down, his servants met him, saying that his son lived. So he inquired of them the hour when he began to amend. They said therefore unto him, Yesterday, at the 7th hour, the fever left him. So the father knew that it was at that hour in which Jesus said unto him, Thy son liveth. And himself believed, and his whole house. This is again the second sign that Jesus did, having come out of Judea into Galilee. John chapter 4 and verse 46. Why did this nobleman or this king's officer, question number one, why did he seek out the Lord? He sought out because of his son. How sick is his son? As far as a father can determine, I'm sure they've done everything that they possibly could up to this point in time. That would be implied. This is now, in essence, a last-ditch effort on behalf of his son. When he heard, verse 47, that Jesus had come out of Judea and he was going to Galilee. Remember, we kind of remember him being in Jerusalem for the Passover, heading back to Galilee, but he passed through Samaria first, and you have the events that went on in Samaria. But now back, he goes to him. We see that in verse 47 because of his son. In verse 48, Jesus said to him, obviously there are others around, but the rebuke seems to be pointed directly at the man. Except you see signs and wonders, you will in no wise believe. You want to help me with that?
They kept asking for signs and miracles, and they thought that was proof.
Okay, so again, you're gonna even if we remember him being in Nazareth, his people, because he was one of them, they felt like that was something that was owed them. And of course, the Lord chose not to there. Remember, we've also placed emphasis upon what is the Lord people, what is he really wanting people to believe? In what way? What's the first and foremost thing he's putting out there? That he's the Son of God. He's going to do signs, yes, but we've said, watch how much emphasis is placed upon what he teaches. It's going to come up over and over again. He's wanting people to believe he is who he says he is based upon what I'm declaring, what I am teaching. And the rebuke, ever so slight, we may say, to this man is, I want you to be like those people in Samaria. Remember when the Samaritan woman went to town, she told everybody, he told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Christ? And it says that the people believed in Jesus because of her word. But then the Lord was with them for 2 days once they asked him, and once they heard him teach, they said, at first we believed in him because of your word, but now we believe because of what he said. There's nothing said about signs and miracles being done in Samaria. They believed based upon what he taught. Jesus is trying to tell this man, you need to be like those people. Putting the emphasis upon, you need to believe in me because of what I've taught. And that has continued down even till this morning.
Yeah, they knew the scriptures as well, because they even talked to them about what was said in the scriptures.
They knew the scriptures to some extent. That's exactly right. They should have known it better, and he will point that out to them time and time again. Once this is said to him in verse 47, his reply is, I need you to come down. I need you. What did the father think was necessary in order for his son to be healed? He believed that Jesus needed to be in the same place that the boy would be. You got to come down. That's how this will work. Whatever I've heard in regard to the signs and the miracles that you've done so far, the only thing I've heard is it happened to people who were in your presence. Well, let's back up for a second. What did it require on the Father's part to even come to Jesus? Even if you want to conclude that was a last-ditch effort, what still did that require a little of? It still required some faith. It's about 20 miles. That's the distance. And depending on what time he left, it's not really a distance you're going to cover in one day. So he's not going to get there in one day. If he did get there in one day, depending on how long all this took the next day, he's not going to get back. You know that from the text. He doesn't get back the same day the Lord has this conversation with him. So it required him to make an effort to get there. It required him, obviously, to demonstrate some faith. After Jesus makes that statement to him in verse 48, it's not a denial. Jesus isn't saying, I'm not going to do what you've asked. Jesus is saying, I need you to believe because of what I teach and not because it all hinges on seeing me do something. In verse 50, the Lord said, go your way. Your son lived. And the man believed what? What did he do? And that's just exactly what we just talked, what Jesus wanted him to do, right? He did exactly what you talk about, getting the lesson quick. That's how we ought to be. The response ought to be, okay, the Lord said, I need to believe him because of his word and not necessarily because of signs. He now says, go your way, your son lives. And now here's a test of my what? Here's a test of my faith. And he went his way. You ever kind of like envision this whole scenario? This man arrives. He's sort of an important person. He's a king's officer, maybe well-to-do, but again, all the money in the world, no matter how much he's got, isn't saving his son. He comes here because he's heard rumors. He's heard of things about this one they call Jesus. In his mind, he approaches the Lord. You're going to have to come with me. I can make that happen. The Lord rebukes him. And then the Lord says, go back. Your son lives. Now you've come and you believe you got to, if you have to, physically take this man, Jesus, back with you. And then he says what he does. And your son, who you left dying, and you believe the only way he can now live is for this man to go with you. But now he's just said, you're going to have to believe in my word. You then have to turn and walk away. You see that? I'm just wondering, does a man walk like 20 or 30? Another 100? At some point, wherever the Lord is, he's going to just get smaller and smaller, or at some point you're not going to be able to see him at all. And you know what the man has to keep doing? He's got to keep walking. And he's not going to make it back in 10, 15 minutes. He's going to spend the night someplace. He's going to continue the journey the next morning going down, because, again, down. And no cell phones, no text message on the way saying, we're on our way, we're going to meet you. Phone call. He's going. And all of a sudden, he's going to look up, and who's he going to see? And when you first see your servants, depending on how far they are, and depending on what they're doing, what might be your initial thought? He died. But then, the closer they get, maybe now they're running. And then you hear from them this shouting. He's alive. Your son's alive. And then the Lord says, well, when? How did that all happen? Well, yesterday at 1 o'clock, the fever left him. And now he's doing what? He's doing the math. And he's realizing, well, yesterday at 1 o'clock was when I had that conversation with the Lord. That's when the Lord said, go your way, your son lives. And now you can just see the result of that as he would then share all that with his family. Have you ever thought about it from the family's perspective? I don't know how incapacitated the boy was, but there's other family members, there's other people involved. And at some point the decision is made, I'm going to see the Lord, and dad or your husband leaves. And you're there with the boy. And a night passes and nothing is getting better. The morning passes and nothing is getting better. And at 1 o'clock, the fever leaves him. And you have no clue in regard to what's going on in Cana of Galilee. Not till he and the servants that you send, you got to go get him. You got to let him know he's alive. He's okay. The fever left him. And now you as a family see the father and the servants return, and the father then begins to share with his family. And then the family's putting it all together, and the result of that is what? Himself believed. Well, I thought we already said he had some faith. He already believed to some degree. That's what prompted him to go there in the first place. So what does this mean here that he believed? His faith was increased. It grew as a result of what had happened. The cure had come because he had believed what? The word of Jesus. What are you and I required to do? Have you seen a sign? Have you seen a miracle? Have you ever been where the Lord Jesus? You've never seen a miracle biblically. You've never seen a Bible miracle. You might have heard about some amazing things in your life. But when we look at these miracles, one thing that we see that's characteristic of these miracles compared to things that people want to say are miracles today is people get well. People overcome diseases. I've had a fever before, and eventually it went away. When the fever left him at 1 o'clock, what's implied is one moment he had a fever and the next moment he didn't. We'll keep making this contrast as it relates to these miracles. So not being people who've seen signs and miracles, we haven't been in the presence of Jesus, we're required to have faith based upon what? Based upon the Word of God. Remember this text, many other signs therefore did Jesus do in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book, but these are written that ye might believe. That's John chapter 20, verse 30 and 31. Brother Jim.
One of the versions I looked at, which used the term, he was told that his son was recovering. And I didn't like that because it implied, well, he's kind of getting better. What another version says, he lives.
Sure. Yeah, so one version said recovery. Again, there will be a couple of, and we will point those out in regard to a couple of these miracles. You might even be thinking about them, that there's going to be a couple of times where the Lord chose not to heal instantaneously. But that would just be a couple of exceptions that we'll see. Again, the fever left him. His servants met him, said the boy is well. The father made the connection and he believed, and his whole house. Again, verse 54 says this is the second sign that Jesus did. Second sign Jesus did where? Well, you had the first one pointed out in verse 46. Where did he turn water into wine? Cana of Galilee. The second sign he did in Cana of Galilee was healing this nobleman's son. But you and I already know, based upon the study over the last couple of weeks, that there was other times in which the Lord performed signs. Remember, in the Passover, John chapter 2, verse 23, now when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover during the feast, many believed on his name, beholding the signs which he did. So this wasn't the second sign in number total. It was the second sign he did here in this particular area. It's also worth pointing out that the family believed, and that started with one man who had a little faith and sought out the Lord. Again, the effect that faith can have on our lives and the effect that it can have upon those around us. Other comments about this healing of this nobleman's son. Sister.
It's happened before. Every time we see something like this, people know about it before it gets there. You know, there's no social media, no radio, none of that. Somehow, information about him, he is so awesome to these people that they know about him before he gets there. They know what he's capable of.
That's right. Sister Diane points out, and we'll see that even more so, I think, here in the next miracle that we look at it, that as the Lord performs these miracles, even in Nazareth, remember, nothing had happened in Nazareth, but people in Nazareth had heard about things that had happened elsewhere. Or why would they be asking him to perform signs there? So again, his reputation is going to precede him. Now, this will be welcomed by the poor in spirit. It will be welcomed by all who have diseases or demon possessed, as we'll note momentarily. Any other comments about this? Brother Jay?
Well, I just think about the demeanor, the demeanor of Christ, because when he spoke, when he taught, there was something about him that people noticed. There was authority to him. And when he first says to this man, unless you see signs, wonders, you will not believe. And then he just tells him, go, your son will live. And I just feel there's just something about him when he speaks. And again, I know it's a heart thing, it's a faith thing, but I just think there was still something about Christ that drew people.
Yeah.
And there was something that drew this man. And that's why he was able to just turn around and walk away, because not anybody could just say this.
Sure.
I mean, there's people that have said things to me that I walked away, I believe what they said.
Yeah.
And then there were people
Yeah.
that I didn't. There was just something. And I don't know, I can't get over the fact of being in his presence and listening to him speak. It wasn't just a normal
That's right.
person.
Well, the obvious point that Brother Jay makes regarding how the Lord would be special, something unique, would be because he was God in the flesh. And even when this man comes to him, before the man gets to him, the Lord already knows what this man's need is. And the Lord already knows what this man needs to hear. Now, that is obviously the biggest difference between the Lord in any given situation and us. We're going to do our best to tell them in the moment if a question is asked or a situation comes up. We're going to do our best based upon the wisdom that God has given us to say what we think needs to be said. But that is still a far cry from what the Lord is going to do every time. He'll never misspeak. Never. It's always going to be absolutely spot on, to use a modern term. Even so, we have the duty and responsibility sometimes to do our very best and then to let the power of the Word of God have its effect. The people that are going to come to the Lord, truly coming to him, are going to have a sense of need. Sometimes it's going to be due to a sickness, but there's going to be others that are going to come to him because of sin. And they realize he's the only hope they have. Brother Randall.
What I think of first is the fact that this man is a Gentile, just like Cornelius. And he touched his whole household by his belief in faith. We can do the same thing with our faith if we just do it.
Yeah. Well, the Lord isn't going to make distinctions based upon people's nationality. The Lord is even going to teach those who are sinners. I mean, wow, with a capital S. We've already seen it. She was a Samaritan living in sin with a man who wasn't her husband. How many times married previous? And who still stopped at the well knowing she's coming and told her about him. Who did it? He did. And remember the question I asked you? Would I do that? Or would I go, oh, I'm not, no. I'm just asking. I think the best answer is, I better do it. I better do just what he did. It's trying to figure out who's worthy and who's not worthy of the gospel. If I do that, I'm really in dangerous territory because I may never have been worthy of the gospel. And yet it's been shared with me. I'm going to Mark chapter 1, verse 21. Mark chapter 1 and verse 21. We'll read there first before we go to Luke's account. And they go to Capernaum. And straightway on the Sabbath, Mark 1 and 21, he entered into the synagogue and taught. And they were astonished at his teaching. For he taught them as having authority and not as their scribes. Straightway there was in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit. And he cried out, saying, What are we to do with thee, Jesus, thou Nazarene? Art thou come to destroy us? I know thee who thou art, the Holy One of God. And Jesus rebuked him, saying, Hold thy peace and come out of him. And the unclean spirit, tearing him and crying with a loud voice, came out of him. And they were all amazed, insomuch that they questioned among themselves, saying, What is this? A new teaching? With authority he commandeth even the unclean spirits, and they obey him. and the report of him went out straightway everywhere into all the region of Galilee round about. Luke chapter 4. Luke, in his recording of these events, remember, on behalf of Theophilus, carefully tracing out the things that had happened. Luke chapter 4, beginning in verse 31, he came to Capernaum, a city of Galilee. He was teaching them on the Sabbath day. Verse 32, Luke chapter 4. They were astonished at his teaching, for his word was with authority. And in the synagogue, there was a man that had a spirit of in the synagogue, there was a man that had a spirit of an unclean demon. And he cried out with a loud voice, "Ah, what have we to do with thee, Jesus, thou Nazarene? Art thou come to destroy us? I know thee, who thou art, the Holy One of God." And Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Hold thy peace and come out of him." And when the demon had thrown him down in the midst, he came out of him. Note the commentary by the doctor, having done him no harm. And amazement came upon all. And they spake together one with another, saying, "What is this word? For with authority and power he commanded the unclean spirits, and they come out. And there went forth a rumor concerning him into every place of the region round about." Why were the people in the synagogue astonished? Page 12. Why were they astonished at Jesus' teaching? He taught them with authority. Now, Brother Jay touched on that a few moments ago. Somebody want to help me with that? What he taught them as one with authority and not as the scribes. So they're making a contrast. They're hearing something distinct in his teaching from what they've been used to hearing. What might that be? Brother Jim?
My thought was, the one version comparative to the scribes, in my thought, the scribes read the text. They could describe what they were reading to some degree, where he obviously went much more in depth since he was involved in the creation of the text.
Got a great point. So now that maybe the Brother Jim suggested the distinction from the hearer's standpoint, what they were used to hearing the law read and maybe even expounded upon a little. Maybe we may say that their commentary was shallow, superficial, kind of just hit the highlights. But the Lord here, one part of his authority was he's going a lot deeper. He's taking our thinking to another level. And Brother Jim added, is it no wonder he could do that? How perfect did he know this word? Well, he is the word. He is it. And so again, a part of that teaching with authority was obviously, Brother Jim would say, he knew what he was talking about. The confidence that he had, knowing what it was. Yes, ma'am.
Compared to judges, Jesus is God. Saying, when you stand before a judge is going to say, you can think all day long, this is what the law says. With Jesus, others may say, well, this is what I think. This is what this means. I think this is what this means. Jesus said, no, this is the way it is.
Yes. Yeah, the contrast between, again, sometimes our think-sos or people of the world thinking, well, this is what I think he meant by that, where the Lord isn't going to be teaching from that perspective. He had authority. Obviously, he knew what he was talking about, and he believed in what he taught. Think about it. He knew the mind of God, and as now God in the flesh, he's been commissioned to share that word with others. No doubt the authority he had when he taught, and it got people's attention. And in the synagogue, while this is going on, there's a man there, and he's possessed. Maybe he was behaving when he came into the synagogue. Hard to believe he would have been allowed to enter had he been causing a riot. Be that as it may, he's there. And the possessed man cried out, What have I to do with thee? Did you catch that in the text? So this man is possessed by more than one demon. It's going to bring up now some questions that we have regarding demon possession. First one we've had. What I'm asking for us to do for a while here is let's just stay with the text and see what we can learn based upon what we're reading. There's going to be some things that are going to become obvious. One might be already that if you've read through your Old Testament, one thing you didn't find a lot of in the Old Testament was what? Demon possession. Makes me scratch my head. But now, with the advent of God in the flesh, guess what we begin to see a whole lot of? Demon possession. That might already help us in regard to this. But in this, we see that this man, and he won't be the only one, Mary Magdalene, that close associate of the Lord. How many? Well, we'll just save that. More than one. But here, what have we to do with these? So that's one thing. There was more than one. And tell me something else in regard to the demon that possessed this man. He knew some things. He knew some things. Now, again, in regard to these demons, James chapter 3 talks about demons who believe and shudder, but they're not saved. These demons are under the power of, absolutely, they're evil. What did Satan know in regard to Jesus? In the temptation, since you are the Son of God, Satan knew these things. Those that are going to be under Satan's power are going to know these things. Satan, you remember, in the beginning was not evil, because at the end of Genesis chapter 1, all that God created, he pronounced that would have included all angels.
Satan decided to leave. He said, I'll be back I'll be back when it's better time.
He left him for a more convenient season. That's right. He didn't leave. He wasn't going to leave him alone forever. So this man who's possessed with more than one, the demons that are in him understood that Jesus was a Nazarene, and they understood he was the Holy One of God. And they also asked the question, are you come to destroy? Did he come to destroy them, demons who would be under the power of, absolutely. You want a verse? How about 1 John chapter 3? You want to put that down, connect it to what you have there? I believe that's it. Let me double check the 1 John 3 and verse 8. That's it. That's the one you want. Look at the end of 1 John 3 and verse 8. To this end was the Son of God manifested, that he might destroy the works of the devil. One of the works of the devil was to cause the demons under his power to possess people. And the Lord had power over that. Verse 25, he rebuked him, the demon, told him to hold his peace, told him to come out. Did he come out lightly? No, he took advantage of one last opportunity to tear at this man, to grieve this man, to throw him down. It didn't end up causing any damage. Luke pointed that out. He's having to go back and find that out. Well, what happened when this man convulsed and the demon came out of him? Well, after it happened, he was fine. Nothing was broken, no scratches. He was okay. No hurt, Luke would record. The man was not hurt. Well, you can imagine all those that are in the synagogue. What was the result when they saw it? They're amazed. And now they're connecting what he's teaching. What is this? This is a new teaching. This with authority. Even with authority, he commands. He doesn't go through some of these other processes that people are trying to do to cast these demons out, whatever that may be. Not very successful. He just says the word and they come out. We've never seen anything like this. And the result was, as Sister Diane pointed out, his reputation is growing. The report of him will go out. And that will have a twofold effect. There will be those that aren't interested. In fact, there'll be the majority. They don't want to change. They don't want to believe. They want to keep on living their life, however religious they think it is, just exactly like they're doing. But there's going to be the destitute. There's going to be the people out there who are beyond hope. And they're looking for the Messiah. And whatever he commands, they're going to be willing to do. It's the same with people today. People who don't want to make a change, they want to live their life under the influence of Satan, or people who are willing to give up whatever's necessary because of the life to come. Any comments on this demon-possessed man? Brother Jim and Sister Diane, or vice versa?
Well, there's another type of response, and that's what we see later on, is that they use this against Jesus. You're interacting with this devil, you must be of the devil because you can make him come out. And so there's that misunderstanding that we see there too.
Sister Diane points out the almost the insanity of those who will say you're casting out demons by the power of the devil. And it doesn't say that the Lord laughed or chuckled or went, but it seems as though any of those reactions might have been proper, because he's going to point out to them, well, let me just give you a very basic lesson on history and kingdoms divided against themselves. And gave even those people who would have been so silly to say such a thing to go, yeah, try it. Brother Jim.
We talked about the unclean demons. We said, okay, what's a clean demon? But I'll do a little research on unclean. Well, basically, evil. Diane pointed out that word shows up repeatedly in Leviticus, whatever. When you see all the detailed laws, this is unclean, that's unclean. And Diane made a point that was basically, these are things that are against God's law. So whatever is termed unclean, it's against God's law.
Brother Jim points out the word used unclean regarding this demon, and how that word unclean, if you go back to the Old Testament study, time and time again, it was against the law of God. Again, God may have given them specific rules and regulations, and if they fell outside of that or something happened, they might be unclean. That may be for a limited period of time, but that was still the idea in the moment. Very good. We're going to look at this more. Even when we get through with our study and we've looked at every verse that the Bible is going to teach us regarding these demons, there are going to be some questions that we can't answer. What we're going to try to do is understand it to the extent of what is revealed to us. Yeah, very good. Anything else? Brother Doug.
I have heard, getting of knowledge is asking questions. That's exactly what these people are doing. To start the process, you know, they see the miracles, they hear the rumors, but they start asking questions. Who is this and what is this gospel?
That's right.
What are they talking about? And it starts the whole process. I don't think God is scared for these people to ask questions.
Okay.
He wants them to know what it is.
Brother Doug is pointing out that, again, as people begin to ask Jesus questions, they are not discouraged from asking him questions. What does he know in regard to any question that's going to be asked? He knows the answer. He knows all the answers. Have you ever met people like that? Seemingly know it all. And to ask them a question, it would be like, I dare you. The Lord never does that. The point Brother Doug would then make is, neither should we. We should welcome any question that someone may have regarding the truth of the gospel, whether I can answer it in the moment or not. You know what? I got connections. I got people that love the Lord too that can help me answer a question that I may not in the moment. All we want is for the question to be answered truthfully, because we want that heart to be one that would turn to the Lord. Okay, we'll pick up with the next miracle as we continue looking at this. Thank you for your good comments and for your attention. Did everybody get a copy of pages 14 through 18? Maybe, let's see, one copy. Yeah, I think that. Okay, very good.